Okay, so let's say Scotland becomes an independent country. What money do you use? It sounds like a simple question, right? But the choice of currency is one of the most complicated, high-stakes decisions any new nation has to make. Today, we're going to unpack the analysis of economist Ronald MacDonald to really get to the heart of the economics behind this huge question.
You know, this was pretty much the biggest sticking point back in the 2014 independence referendum. And guess what? It's just as central to the debate today. So what are the actual options on the table, and what are the trade-offs? All right, let's get into it.
And here's the thing. The source material we're looking at really hammers this point home. This isn't just about what you use to buy a coffee. Nope. The currency you choose affects a country's entire economic landscape. We're talking everything from the interest rates the government pays to borrow money to how much cash is actually available for public services like schools and hospitals. It's a massive deal.
To really wrap our heads around all this, here's our game plan. First, we'll build a quick toolkit of some key financial ideas. Then, we'll look at the official plan to just keep using the British pound. After that, we'll check out Scotland's financial data and see why our author thinks this whole plan could be a recipe for disaster. And finally, we'll explore the big alternative, creating a brand new currency from scratch.
Right. Before we can really judge the different proposals, we need to understand the rules of the game. These are some core principles from international finance that basically shape how global markets would look at an independent Scotland.
First up, interest rate parity. Now, in theory, borrowing costs should be pretty similar between stable, developed countries. But here's the catch. For a new, smaller nation like Scotland, investors would probably demand a little extra. They'd want a liquidity premium because its debt market is smaller, and an initial premium, just because, well, its economic policies are brand new and untested. Long story short, that means higher borrowing costs, right from day one.
Okay, now this next one is absolutely crucial. It's called the trilemma. In today's world of global finance, you simply can't have it all. If you want money to flow freely across your borders, which is pretty much a given, you have a big choice to make. You can either fix your currency to another one, like the pound, or you can control your own interest rates. You cannot do both. So choosing to keep the pound automatically means giving up control of your own monetary policy. You get to pick 2 out of 3, and that's it.
An independent Scotland would suddenly have its own balance of payments. Just think of it like a national bank statement with the entire rest of the world. If you're spending more money abroad than you're bringing in, what's called a deficit, you have to cover that gap somehow. That means either attracting foreign investment to come in, or just burning through your savings of foreign cash. The author calls this the key barometer of a country's economic health.
And this is the final piece of our toolkit, and honestly, it might be the most important one. You have to remember, investors don't just sit around and wait for things to go wrong. They look at a country's plan, they look at its economic numbers, and they make bets right now on what they think is going to happen in the future. Their actions today can actually cause a crisis tomorrow.
So, with that financial toolkit in our back pocket, let's take a look at the official plan that was put forward by the Sustainable Growth Commission. The idea is to keep using the pound sterling even after independence. This process has a name. It's called sterlingization. It basically just means you informally use another country's currency without any kind of formal agreement.
The plan itself is a 3-step process. Step 1, just keep using the pound. Easy enough. Step 2, in the background, start building all the institutions you'd need for your own currency, like a central bank. And then, Step 3, only make the switch to a new Scottish currency if, and only if, a whole bunch of economic conditions are met way down the road.
And you can totally see the political logic here, can't you? It's all about providing a sense of continuity and reassurance. By keeping the pound, all your existing contracts, your mortgage, your savings, everything stays in the same currency. It's designed to avoid that immediate and potentially really painful shock of revaluing everybody's money.
But remember what we just said, international markets are forward-looking. They don't just look at the plan, they look at the underlying numbers. And this, according to our author, is where the whole thing starts to look really shaky.
Now have a look at this chart. What you're seeing is Scotland's onshore trade balance, which is just a fancy way of asking if it sells more to the world than it buys from the world. And as you can see, for over 2 decades, it's been a persistent and actually growing deficit. Scotland consistently buys more than it sells.
So when you factor everything in, the author estimates that Scotland's total current account deficit, that national bank statement we talked about, is somewhere around a huge 10% of its entire economic output, its GDP. This one number, 10%, is the real foundation of the author's entire critique.
So, here we are at the crucial point. What happens when that plan to keep the pound slams into the economic reality of a 10% deficit? This is where the author argues the plan stops looking stable and starts looking like a recipe for a potential crisis.
This is the exact question investors all around the world would be asking. A 10% deficit is a massive economic imbalance. Does it really make sense for a country with that kind of financial picture to have its currency unofficially locked 1-to-1 with the pound?
Well, according to our source, the markets would probably say no, not really. A huge deficit like that screams that the currency is overvalued and needs to fall to make exports cheaper. And the fact that the plan is officially called transitional is like an open invitation for investors to bet on when, not if, the whole thing will break. Without a mountain of foreign currency reserves to defend the pound, and facing all that risk, investors would demand cripplingly high interest rates to lend Scotland any money. And this brings us to the author's really stark conclusion. The very plan that was designed to create stability could, because it's just not believable to markets, trigger the exact opposite, a sovereign debt crisis. Scotland could find it basically impossible to borrow money at rates it could afford, and that could lead to a full-blown financial meltdown.
Okay, so if keeping the pound is seen as that risky, what's the alternative? Well, the author argues it's a different and also very difficult path, launching a brand new, separate Scottish currency.
This table is really telling. Just look at the countries with fixed exchange rates like Denmark or Hong Kong. They have to hold massive amounts of foreign currency. We're talking over 20% or even 100% of their GDP just to prove they can defend that peg. Now look at countries with floating currencies like the UK. They hold way less. Scotland's estimated inherited reserves, around 8%, look a lot more like a country that lets its currency float freely.
So here are the two paths, side by side, according to the author. On one hand, you have sterlingization. It avoids that initial pain of revaluing everything, but it risks a massive crisis and would probably require severe austerity, think big cuts to public spending, to even have a chance of working. On the other hand, a new, floating currency would be believable to markets and give Scotland control. But, and this is a huge but, it would almost certainly mean a sharp, immediate drop in the new currency's value.
And that really brings us to the author's summary of the central dilemma. The reason the sterlingization plan is so politically appealing is that it avoids this elephant in the room, the painful, super difficult process of redenomination. That's the moment when all the pounds in Scottish bank accounts get converted to a new currency, maybe at a lower value, changing the worth of everyone's savings, salaries, and debts overnight.
And that leaves us with the ultimate conundrum. You've got what global financial markets think is credible on one side and what regular citizens might find acceptable on the other. How does a new country possibly navigate that gap? That right there is the fundamental choice at the very heart of Scotland's currency debate.